to it.
Wolfman's got nards.
Nobody trusts anybody now.
Come on, you think? You want to live forever?
Now what?
But no matter what happens, Godzilla will live.
And welcome back to the 74th episode of the Monster Movie Stompdown. Of course, you got your host, Sludge, here. My co-host across from me
is Mark,
who is an absolute turd basket, and our brother from Texas,
Ruben.
So the reason Mark's a turd basket, Mark's been here for about an hour, and I think I pretty much heard of nothing but about the Godzilla 98 figurines up in the Nerd Vault.
The extensive collection that Sludge has of Godzilla 98 merchandise in his Nerd Vault.
Yeah.
And Ruben, I did send you pictures, and you are in charge. You are in charge of the Facebook.
Oh no!
I need those to go up on Facebook.
Know what? That's a great idea.
Yeah,
you know what?
Yeah, that
fine.
needs to go up.
And listeners, I will put up the whole collection so y'all can see, where they're pinpointing here. Well, I had because it boiled down to it is I had to move some stuff around. We're getting the boys, of course, the downstairs of our house, they've got their game room where they play. They've got a projector with their Xbox, and they've got skee ball and air hockey, and they also have a Mortal Kombat 3 the arcade 1-up arcade machine. But they've been asking for a gaming PC for Christmas, and they don't know it, but they're getting one. But in order to put the desk down there for the room, something has to come out. So if I'm moving something, I'm moving the arcade back to the Nerd Vault. Like, I want the Mortal Kombat arcade back up there. So I've got to do that. But the Nerd Vault is so packed full that I've had to do some rearranging. But in the process, I've actually had to sell things to make room. Like, I just sold several $100s worth of comic books just to make room so that I can move things around. Well, that also meant moving some of my figures off of the shelves because I had to move my Bible study books to another location in the room because I keep my Bibles, like everything for Sludge is there. Like, so all my toys, all my movies, all my games, all my Bible stuff, it's all in one room. Like, it's, I love it.
And your lunch boxes.
And my freaking lunchbox. Okay. So
too.
I've got this Godzilla 98 lunchbox that my dear aunt that I love.
I'll give you a pass on that. I'll give you a pass on that.
He still uses
He
uses that lunchbox to take his lunch to work every day.
Downstairs.
Downstairs in the basement.
That's what I do.
Notice he did not deny it. He just said he takes it downstairs. He did not deny it.
If we go up there, I bet that thing is super heavy because I used to use the thermos to put loose change in. Yep. And I'm pretty sure the change is still in there. I'm about to see after the episode. But so anyways, I had to move the lunch box.
She makes you peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and puts it in.
Hey, she puts it in the refrigerator. I'll dang sure use the lunch box.
I'm telling you,
take me back to kindergarten years.
It happens.
So I had to move the lunchbox, which means it had to move onto one of the Godzilla shelves because it was not on one of the Godzilla shelves because of how much I don't like the movie. But so Mark comes walking in, and now there it is, front and center, like next to the Mattel 77 Godzilla game. And Mark's like, "What is this?"
With a spotlight on it, Mark?
Yeah.
Was there a spotlight on it, Mark?
It was.
He pulls the phone out, starts taking pictures. I'm like, God, here we go, man.
And I just walked in and just like some kind of strange energy started pulling me to that corner.
It's because you love that film. It is. You seek that film out. That's what it is.
You will not find any of that stuff at my house.
Whatever. I guarantee you've seen that movie more times than I have.
Oh, I don't think so.
I have seen it a whole. Wait, we did do it in this show.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah.
I have seen it
we had to watch
twice.
it for this show.
I think didn't you go you went to the theaters and saw it?
So did you see it at the movie? You saw it at the theater?
No, you didn't go with
right?
me. You went with Jada.
Yeah.
I didn't go.
To see what? Jada wasn't even born when that movie came out.
Oh, that's right.
That was 98.
I was about to say that. It was 98.
I was like, man, if I was popping kids
that
out.
was me, man.
I was like 13.
What is this, a Cheech and Chong episode or what, man? What's going on here?
Gosh. So, anyways, so we're back. It is now Christmas season, and as we promised, man, we want to give you guys an extra gift, and so we're giving you a double feature for the first episode of the month, in which we're doing Frankenstein Conquers the World and War of the Gargantuas. The
figurines on the shelf.
Oh my gosh.
Figurines on the shelf.
Where's the mute button? This is why I need one of those Roadcaster boards so I can just mute you easily from here. and War of the Gargantuas, which was the quasi sequel to Frankenstein Conquers the World. Pretty stoked for both of these movies. Mark, was this I know you've seen War of the Gargantuas before.
Yeah.
But was this the first time you saw Frankenstein?
No, I had seen Frankenstein.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you'd
Yeah.
seen it yet or not.
Yeah.
So, but Frankenstein Conquers the World. These were actually these two films were part of a co-production deal with Henry Saperstein. They did 3 monster films with Toho, Frankenstein Conquers the World, War of the Gargantuas, and then the third film, being Ruben's favorite, they did.
That's right.
They co-produced Monster Zero,
Yes.
Godzilla versus Monster Zero with them. So for this one, Frankenstein came out. It was Monster Zero was the first of the 3, right? I'm trying to remember if it came out before Frankenstein or after. Frankenstein came out in August of 65.
yeah.
So it was right around the time.
Yeah. And then Gargantua was 66.
Yep. But
You
then,
know, so-
so I think Monster Zero came first. May have been the first one because I think it came out before August, if I remember. I can't remember correctly exactly. I know it came out in 65, but I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But so Frankenstein came out August of 1965. Did 93 million in the box office. This was a pretty decent, successful film, and of course, part of their picture deal was including Nick Adams, who was in Monster Zero. He's in Frankenstein as well as it seems like they kept not just Nick was the plan to have Nick in all 3 films, but part of the deal was to have Kumi Mizuno in all 3 films because she's in Monster Zero, she's in Frankenstein, and she's also in War of the Gargantuas. And of course, War of the Gargantuas came out, like Ruben said, the next year, July 31st of 1966. All 3 films were, of course, directed by Ishiro Honda. You had the same crew, you know what I mean? So you had Ishiro Honda directing it, Tomoyuki Tanaka producing it. I mean, just the big 4, you know, of Toho at the time. Akira Ifukube on the soundtrack, Eiji Tsuburaya doing the special effects. You know, so you had the main 4, but actually War of the Gargantuas was the final film of Ishiro Honda's contract with Toho. So it was at that point after that film that anything else he did with them that they worked it on a film-by-film basis with Tanaka himself. But this was the end of his contract. And I think that was 3 pretty good films in a run for him. But
and what I'm showing is Frankenstein was the first one,
Frankenstein came up first.
and then Monster Zero.
And then, okay, what month did Monster
Yeah,
Zero?
Monster Zero was December 65.
Okay,
December
December.
65 is what I have for Monster Zero.
And then War of the Gargantuas.
Right.
They put the big boy in the middle there. So let's jump into these real quick. What we're going to do is, because we got 2 films, we're going to throw both trailers at you, and then we have something special during this little time. Again, it's Christmas time. We love you all so much, and as you all know, we're a part of the Give Me Back My Podcast network with all of our good friends, Charlie, Dan, Pete, Nave, Jimmy, Nate, all of them. And we've got something special lined up for you all for Christmas, and you're going to find about it right after the trailers. Here you go.
From the ocean's unfathomable depths, a gigantic, man-like creature appears. From the fiery depths of the earth comes a prehistoric mastodon of destruction. Never before has the screen known such heart-stopping terror. Starring Nick Adams.
Well, I feel he's very important from a scientific point of view. I'd have to cut off a leg or an arm.
Doctors, I won't let you conduct this test.
Frankenstein, with the strength of 1,000 men. And every man's need for affection that makes him a willing captive.
The chain hurts you.
The new scoop of the century. The horrifying touch of a severed hand with a life of its own. Terrifying force of a monster that dwarfs man's tallest structures.
Yes, this is Dr. Stewart speaking.
We need your help. Sir, you've studied giant animals. You had one in captivity, didn't you?
Yes, that was 5 years ago. You know, he might have been a young species of a gargantua.
Attention! All aircraft are to turn away. An alert! An alert! This is Tokyo Tower. Don't land!
Headed northwest and has reached this point. We will move headquarters out to the field immediately.
Let him have it. Hey, look! Another one!
What's the matter?
The giant!
Get back to the car.
Send all defense units to the beaches.
Hey, this is Charlie.
And this is Sludge.
Join us this Christmas Eve as we crash dance Quiet Night and convince him to regale us with a special Christmas tale.
That's right, Charlie. This Christmas, all of us at the Give Me Back My Podcast Network want to give all of you the best gift that we can think of.
Featuring special Christmas episodes from Give Me Back My Action Movies, Give Me Back My Horror Movies, the monster movie Stompdown, and Good Beer, Bad Movie Night.
So grab your eggnog or one of Pete's favorite frosty beverages and join us and Dan by the fire as we present Give Me Back My Podcast Network's Christmas Extravaganza. All right, so there's the trailers for Frankenstein Conquers the World and War of the Gargantuas, and the surprise we've been talking about. You're going to get a special Christmas episode from all of us at the Give Me Back My Podcast Network, and we're super stoked for it. We really hope you enjoy it. I say we, okay? Now I love all these guys, like everybody. I mean, Pete, his crew, Jimmy, just recently getting to know Jimmy. He's awesome. I love his podcast. I'm super stoked for the podcast that him and Dan have got coming. I don't know if I'm allowed to announce it yet, but they've got another podcast coming to the network, I think in January. Nate is absolutely awesome. Of course, love Charlie, love Dan, but me and Charlie and Dan's a part of it, man. We're working our butts off on this one, so we hope you all enjoy it because we've put a lot of work into it.
Here we go, Mark.
Oh yeah! Oh my God!
Well, we want to make it something special for you guys,
Yeah.
and we think you're really going to enjoy it. We were hoping it's going to be an experience that you've never had with a podcast. And we will be dropping that on Christmas Eve.
Sorry.
And Mark, I really feel guilty when I'm sitting out at the beach in my chair with my little drink with the umbrella on it.
Oh,
like, man,
yes.
Poor Sludge, poor Charlie. They're working so hard.
Oh yes.
Sit.
Yeah, I agree.
We got to
with you.
throw in. I got to throw in a little Pete's podcast in here while I'm sipping a lager that's yellow and has foam on top and tastes good. That's it. That's all I know.
Gosh, but hopefully you guys enjoy it. I mean, we got a fun month for you guys. Not just here, but with all the shows. So let's jump into it, man. We got 2 movies to give you guys. First one is Frankenstein Conquers the World, and as we told you, came out in August of 1965. So this movie, I'll try to run through the synopsis a little quick for you, starts off in Nazi Germany in World War II, and you find out that the Nazis actually have the living heart of the Frankenstein monster. And the doctor, Risendorf, I think it's his name. I had to look it up because they don't have to say his name in the movie. They, of course, are being bombarded by the Allies, I couldn't get that out.
Gee,
Nothing. Gee,
man.
Christmas.
It's because you're working so hard.
I'm working so hard.
where
I
that's
have no
at.
idea. But they decide that they can't let the Allies get the heart, so they put the heart on a sub and then ship it all the way across the half the way across the world. And the Japanese find the German sub, and they attack it and get the heart. They destroy the sub, kill the guys, and they take the heart to a research facility in Hiroshima. And they're looking at this heart, and they're starting to talk about it. And the doctor at the table says, this is Frankenstein's heart. And he gives the mythos of, Frankenstein's monsters never really died. He's survived for hundreds of years. And, here's the proof. And then all of a sudden, boom, the bombing of Hiroshima happens and destroys the facility, presumably the heart as well. And then 15 years later, they've rebuilt most of Hiroshima and stuff, and there's rumors of a feral boy running rampant along the streets of Hiroshima. And this is where we meet our main characters, Dr. Bowen, Dr. Suko, and then Kenichiro. And of course, Dr. Bowen is played by Nick Adams, who we saw in Monster Zero, and Dr. Suko is played by Kumi Mizuno, is in the movie. Like part of the deal. And you got Yoshio, I can never say his last name, Tsuchiya, who's another one, Toho actor that's very familiar, you've seen before, is Mr. Kawai. He's another part of the crew. And then Tadao Takashima is Dr. Kawaji in the movie as well. So a lot of familiar faces you're going to see in this because, again, like most Toho films.
You got to give his first name right there. What's his first name right there?
Who? Tadao?
No, Kawaji. What's his...
Oh, Kenichiro.
Okay.
Yeah, Kenichiro.
I just want to see if you can do that.
I can do that. I can get that name, Kenichiro.
You were struggling there. I just want to
dude,
see.
it's hard getting these out. I'm telling you. So they're studying and working with cancer patients, radiation patients. Sorry, that are still surviving from the Hiroshima radiation fallout. And that's when they come across and find this feral boy who is the Frankenstein monster. And they take him in and try to start studying him, but he continues to grow to monstrous proportions, to the point that they have to house him in almost like a zoo quarter jail. He ends up breaking free, and the defense force is like, well, we got to kill him, we got to stop him. Of course, Dr. Bowen and all them are like, no, we've got to save him. Well, while all this is happening and all this is going on, it just so happens that one of the soldiers who delivered the heart is still alive. And he works for like an oil company, and they have been seeing sightings of some kind of a creature burrowing underground at some of their facilities. And this, of course, is the introduction of Baragon, who we've seen, in Destroy All Monsters and again revamped in GMK. Frankenstein Conquers the World is the movie that he originates in. So as they go trying to hunt down and find Frankenstein, people start getting attacked by a monster, eating livestock, eating people, destroying villages, and everyone thinks it's Frankenstein. So that's why the Japanese Defense Force is after him. They want to kill him, Dr. Bowen, and then they're like, no, it's not him. They're trying to save him at the same time, except for Kawaji, who's kind of like I'm going to play it cool and be on the good guy's side, but really I want to kill him too, because you can find out that he just wants a piece, just like the hand of Frankenstein, to study the monster, but wants to kill him. So he's kind of a jerk. Like, the fact that he didn't die in this movie kind of makes me mad. But they come to find out and realize it is not Frankenstein who's doing all this destruction and killing all these livestock and people. It's Baragon. And then this all culminates on the mountain where they find Frankenstein. But as they're looking for him, Baragon attacks, and Frankenstein shows up to kind of save the day, and ensues in the big climactic fight between the two, Frankenstein monster and Baragon in the forest on the mountain. And of course, Frankenstein, who is obviously more human, he is a little smarter. He tries to use tools to his advantage, and he actually grabs two big old trees, lights them on fire with his little fire in his cave, and tries to burn Baragon. But in the process, throws the trees and starts catching the actual forest on fire. So it's a big, massive, fire they're caught in the middle of trying to fight. Frankenstein finally gets the upper hand and actually breaks Baragon's neck, killing Baragon. And as he momentarily celebrates his victory, an earthquake happens from this fight, sinking Frankenstein into the earth, believed to have been dead or forever gone. That's the first ending. There was actually a second ending in the movie filmed where after he defeats Baragon, all of a sudden a lake shows up out of nowhere and a giant octopus shows up out of nowhere and drags Frankenstein into the lake, presumably drowning him, never to be seen again. And that's how he ends up dying in that version. That version was not the theatrical release version. They ended up cutting that, but it came out, on as a special feature or a multiple release. When they eventually did the DVDs and the Blu-rays and stuff. But this one was an interesting take on the Frankenstein mythos. Thought it was actually super cool. I'll go ahead and start on this one. I love the idea that the Nazis got a hold of Frankenstein's heart. Because they were all up to all kinds of no good anyways, and there was a lot, of course, we know that they dealt with in real life, a lot of scientific and a lot of occultic type stuff. So the story of them trying to make super soldiers that couldn't die from Frankenstein's heart as the origin of this, I thought was super cool. Really good idea. And then I thought it was kind of cool to actually have a character, Frankenstein's character, who's all, the monster, when we go back to the Universal film, was kind of this innocent but malicious being anyways. He was torn because he was supposed to be dead, but he's alive. I go back and think of the scene with the little girl at the pond. He kills her, but he kills her by accident because he's wanting to play, you know what I mean? And that spirit of the Frankenstein monster from the novel, from the movie, I feel like Toho did a really good job portraying that, especially when it comes to Frankenstein and Dr. Suko, or Kumi Mizuno's character. There's that bond, between the two of them. When Baragon comes out and attacks her and is about to, we presume, eat her, that's when Frankenstein shows up and the whole fight starts. It's like he's there to protect her. And even Dr. Kawhi, which Frankenstein doesn't know that Dr. Kawhi is really trying to kill him, he still saves him, ultimately. Dr. Kawhi is about to get killed because, there's all these boulders falling on the mountain because of their fight. Frankenstein sees him, picks him up, and takes him to Dr. Bowen and Dr. Suko and saves his life, which at that point, if I was Dr. Kawhi, I'd be like, I'm such a jerk. I deserve to die. I should have died on the mountain, But, so it was really cool. But, of course, when it comes to Baragon, I felt like initially, and ultimately it's not a bad thing, they needed to give, it's not a monster film, they needed a monster for Frankenstein to fight, so they came up and created Baragon. He blows it's actually the only film he does this in, but he blows radioactive fire like Godzilla does. He doesn't have too much of a backstory. They just believe he's been burrowing in the earth for centuries, and he just happened to show up because of Hiroshima and then the things going on with Frankenstein. But that fight, I think, is one of the best monster fights of the 60s from Toho. Maybe even some of the 70s. Like, the fight between those two are absolutely awesome. How the guy who played Frankenstein, Koji Furuhata, and then Haruo Nakajima, who we all know played Godzilla, he plays Baragon. How they didn't walk away with bruises is beyond me, because those two, it was so intense. And then seeing the kind of sad ending, him to become victorious, and everyone's kind of like, okay, Frankenstein really isn't the bad guy, so we don't need to kill him, and then he dies ultimately at the end, harkens back to the Frankenstein story and the end of the 1931 film. I thought it was super great. Special effects were really, really good. You can tell there was a co-production. Obviously bringing in Nick Adams. I think the soundtrack was extremely well done. Actually, I think the soundtrack written for this one and War of the Gargantuas is some of Fukube's best work. But they handled everything extremely well in this movie, especially the special effects department. And Aiji and his crew did a fantastic job with the miniature sets. Most of the time, we like seeing the monsters fight in the city, but this being on the mountain in the woods, the sets looked amazing. Like, so good. Like, I love the fight in the woods with these two. I thought it was great. I love the movie. What about you guys?
I think the whole story was just well written. The actors did an amazing job on it. Definitely Nick Adams. I may be mistaken, but I think this is maybe the first movie I saw him in, and I thought was really good.
So you saw this one before Monster Zero?
Yes,
okay.
yes, and excuse me. So I think overall it's a great, very good movie. This Frankenstein obviously isn't as stiff as Universal's.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
You got a lot of
Definitely
more movement,
not.
a lot of more, which makes the monster, the fights with Baragon even better. I think, and that's one thing Toho definitely stepped up on. The special effects, everything, I thought they did for 1965 a great job on it, and definitely a thumbs up. You, Ruben?
What about you, man?
Man, you guys covered just about everything. I love the writing on this. It's great. They took Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, even though in this one he's just Frankenstein, which kind of bothers me because Frankenstein was his creator, not the name of the monster. Okay,
Right.
That's just me being nitpicky. Okay, but I thought they took Frankenstein's monster and really put a great spin on it. I mean, I'm like, man, this is a great idea. They made him into a giant monster. I thought the acting was great. But to me, my favorite part is in this one my favorite part of this is Frankenstein's monster's makeup. I love the way they did the makeup because there was a couple of scenes that took me back to the original Frankenstein. Some of the mannerisms on his face, kind of the facial expressions he made.
I think even
and we're talking about
shape.
Boris Karloff. We're talking about the master here. Yeah, the head shape, some of the faces he made. I'm like, man, this guy studied the Universal monster Frankenstein. Excuse me, Frankenstein, and got him good. So the acting, I thought was great. Was really great. I like the soundtrack. I thought the special effects were great for 1965. I mean, above average for 1965. I really liked that final battle. Was the reason it's so good for me is because you actually have a monster in Frankenstein who's mobile. Not only that, but he's a thinking. He's way more intelligent than any of the monsters so far, if you ask me. Of all the monsters in Toho's arsenal, he's the most intelligent. I mean, he plans out stuff, and it was just, I thought, and it's so neat to see that battle because his intelligence, and he's able to move around a little bit more. He's not constrained by his suit, like all these other monsters are, even Baragon. But Baragon, I mean, he did great. I mean, that suit actor just did an amazing job as Baragon. So I call it the choreography. The choreography of that battle was top notch, and I agree that it's one of the best battles Toho has put on screen.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, off the top of my head, I cannot think of a battle that is as good as that one. It was really, really good. Now I watched the ending of three versions of the three endings, which I saw the Japanese, which is, I will say, I don't know what you guys think, but the Japanese release of Frankenstein Conquered, well, let's just call it Frankenstein versus Baragon. That one is the best to me.
I agree.
That one is the best. And then when Frankenstein Conquers the World it's good. And if you don't like to read subtitles, then that'll be the one you'd want to watch. But they just cut up so much of it, and they cut it up where the story didn't make sense at some time. Like there's one scene where in the Japanese version that young lady that's dying of radiation poisoning, I assume, right? Yep. She passes away, and it's the year anniversary of her death. So in the Japanese version, they actually go to visit. They go to the town where she lived in. They go visit her gravesite, and then they go to the beach. In the American version, they just appear on the beach out of nowhere. You don't know. There's no context to it or nothing. I'm like, well, okay, what happened? What are they doing on a beach? I need to know what's going on here. So the story is of those. I'm just going to say those two. The story of those two is there's enough changes in it that it changes the story a little bit for me. So I'm going off the Japanese version when I'm talking about the review of this, because I think the American version is still good. It's just not as good as the Japanese.
Yeah, it really
and then of
takes,
course
like,
the final version. Yeah,
it takes the core reasoning behind what Dr. Bowen and Dr.
Right.
Suiko do, why they do what they do, because that
exactly.
I mean, that woman is, I mean, it's key. I mean, she makes him what is what she make, like a pillow or something. She makes him
a pillow, an embroidered pillow.
Yeah, there's that whole
exactly.
scene about that. You know what I mean? Like, he's done all that he can for her. So to take that out. Yeah, I think it really pulls.
Yeah, they took it out, so you don't even know that she passed away in the American version.
No.
They just don't mention it anymore, and I'm like, well, that's kind of important there, and that one stuck out to me. And there was here and there where it just seems like it jumped from one scene to another too abruptly in the American version, where in the Japanese it flowed a little bit smoother. And then the final version I saw was the what is it called? Giant, it's called Frankenstein
versus the giant devilfish.
Giant devilfish,
Yeah.
which all it is the octopus on the end. And it's great to see the octopus, but it didn't make any sense at all. They should have ended it. They should have left it alone and did that. And I understand that it never made it to the theatrical version in either one, because the octopus was put in at the request of Saperstein. Is that correct? He wanted to put in the octopus because he liked, he wanted it. Yeah. And then he didn't like the result, so they cut it out.
Yeah,
they just took it out completely.
Because when you go to the next film, it makes no sense standalone, like at all.
Yeah.
For the octopus show up.
It
But
doesn't.
when
Yeah.
we get to the next movie, it will make sense if they had kept it. We'll talk about that when we get to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. So like, if I'm just reviewing this as, okay, why would all of a sudden in his moment of victory and, and then all of a sudden there comes an octopus moving as slow as can be
On a mountain.
and somehow drags him into the lake. Yeah. It looks like that scene takes 10 minutes to drag Frankenstein's monster into the lake, man. I'm like, man, just drag him in there. But all in all, this movie is a good movie. It's not one that's in regular rotation in any of your, monster movie rotations, here stateside anyway. I mean, I didn't get to see this movie till it came out on VHS. I just never heard of it. Didn't know what it was. Never saw it.
The same for me.
And,
I picked up one of the VHS release of this from Video Kaiju.
Yeah,
in the early
exactly.
90s.
It was just like, and I was gonna say, and it was until the 90s that I saw that I knew this, that I found out that War of the Gargantuas is actually a spin-off of this. War of the Gargantuas, that was always on rotation, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But all in all, this is a great movie. I mean, I enjoyed it, and it's one of those that is not even streaming. You can't find it streaming anywhere. So if you get a chance and you see it somewhere, pick it up, because it's a rarity.
Yeah, it's a rarity, and it's a gem. It is. I think it's an absolute gem. So, all right, let's find out.
You made a note on Baragon there. You know who played
Haruo? Did
yeah. You know who he is, right?
Yeah,
the original Godzilla.
Yep.
The original Godzilla actor. Yeah.
And so he did. He did a lot, bringing a lot.
He did. Well, I mean,
he
Haruo,
did. Yeah.
It wasn't just Godzilla back then. I mean, because he obviously played Godzilla, from 54 to 72, in all the Godzilla films. But I mean, he played Baragon in this. He played Gyra, one of the Gargantuas, in the next film. He played the Gazora, the big octopus from Yog Monster from Space. I mean, he was in a ton of film. He was Varen. He was Rodan. I mean, so the dude was the man when it came to.
He was a master. When it comes to suit acting, he's a master.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
there's none better.
He deserves credit for that.
Yep,
exactly.
So, all right. Well, let's find out how many stomps we gave Frankenstein. All right, so this is another rare instance where all three of us gave it the exact same rating. So we gave this one a solid 3 across the board. Really, really good movie. Depending on which version, I think, one of the things that maybe cut it down a little bit was, even though it was great having Baragon in there and you needed a monster for him to fight, it was a little loose. He did kind of unfortunately feel like it was just thrown in for that purpose. But again, the payoff is great, but they didn't really tie that in as well as they could have. And then depending on which version you watched, whether I'm with Ruben on this one, most of you will probably see the American version of it. It is edited very choppily, and they do take out a key point to the film. So those two things are really what brought it down to a 3 for me. Because I love this movie. I thought it was really good, well worth the watch.
Yeah.
I
agree. I'm gonna say, if you're gonna watch it, watch Frankenstein versus Baragon versus Frankenstein Conquers the World. That's the difference.
Yeah,
so
it's worth seeing the Japanese one on this one for sure. So, all right, let's move to the next one. The sequel to Frankenstein Conquers the World, quasi sequel, is War of the Gargantuas, and this came out the following year in 1966. And I would say quasi sequel because this movie was actually originally titled The Frankenstein Brothers. Actually went through a few names before it finally went down to I think it was like Frankenstein's Decisive Battle, Sanda versus Gyra, which is the name of the Gargantuans. The brown one being Sanda, who's the good one, Gyra being the green one, which is the bad one, and we'll get into that in a moment. But it came out the following year. This one was supposed to have Nick Adams in it as well, but last minute Henry Saperstein decided to pull Nick Adams, and he ended up going with picking Russ Tamblyn to replace him and kind of replace the character, because it was supposed to be the same Dr. Bowen and everything. I mean, it was supposed to be the same thing, but they decided to cast him because I think they were originally going to cast Tab Hunter, but then Tab got replaced after they decided to replace Nick, and they got Russ Tamblyn instead. And there was a lot that happened during this film. So let's run through this and afterwards, because this film's, most of you probably have heard of this one or have seen this film, the two here. So let's run through it real quick. Pretty easy movie. So the movie starts off with a fishing liner, a big fishing ship out in the ocean, and it gets attacked by a giant octopus. And the dude starts freaking out. And he's like, I'm getting attacked by a giant octopus. Where are you guys? Like, all of a sudden his crew's gone. What's happening? It's, but the octopus, as it's attacking him, actually gets one of its tentacles in the cabin, is trying to pull him out, and all of a sudden lets him go. And he looks out the window, and he sees Gyra, the green Gargantua, or the green Frankenstein, depending on which version you watch, attacking the octopus. It ends up killing the octopus before turning and attacking the ship. And so the characters in this one, again, we've got a little slightly bit different of a cast because things had to change up where they replaced Nick Adams. You've got Dr. Stewart, who's played by Russ Tamblyn, Dr. Tokugawa, who's played by Kumi Mizuno, and then Dr. Majida, who's played by the ever famous Kenji Sahara in this film. Mm-hmm. They of course, are kind of doing the same type of studies that, Nick Adams' character and Kumi Mizuno's character was doing in Frankenstein.
Yeah.
But you find out that they actually had a Gargantua, or the Frankenstein monster, a brown one, when it was a baby, and that they had studied. This kind of a la goes back to Frankenstein Conquers the World. But it got loose and ran into the mountains, and they hadn't seen it for 5 years at the when this started. But people are having reports of a Frankenstein monster attacking ships and boats in the ocean, and they just don't believe it. They're like, "Well, it's not him because he wouldn't attack people, and he doesn't live in the ocean." Well, they come to find out that there is a Frankenstein monster, or again, a Gargantua. And that is Gyra, the green one, and it actually ends up coming ashore at the Haneda airport and starts chomping people down because that is his favorite food of choice is human beings. So they decide that they've got to definitely attack him and stop him. Their one ace in the hole at the moment is lights, because where he lives in the ocean, bright lights hurt him. Well, he ends up coming ashore again, and heading towards the mountain range. They don't know why, but they lay a trap for him with maser tanks, and they end up actually lining the river where he's at on the mountain with electrical rods. And they're planning on doing is electrocuting him to no end and trying to kill him. So they almost succeed, actually. The Japanese Defense Force takes him down pretty heavily. He's bloodied up. Actually, a great sequence. But before they could finish off Gyra, out of nowhere comes Sanda, the brown Gargantua, or the brown Frankenstein, depending on the version you're watching. So Sanda shows up and saves Gyra. And they're trying to find out why, what's the relation. So they believe that these two are brothers. But Dr. Stewart and Dr. Tokugawa, again, Tamlin and Mizuno's character, find out that it's more than that, as they find skin samples of each one from the incident on the mountain range where they try to kill Gyra and Sanda saves them, that their cells are identical, that they're actually the same creature. And what they assume is when Sanda escaped from their facility as a child, he must have somehow ripped some flesh off, and that flesh floated out to the ocean, feeding on plankton, grew into Gyra. So they're not just brothers, they're literally the same creature, and which is probably why Sanda or Gyra was heading more inland, presumably to find Sanda, like almost feeling the pull to him. So Sanda's got Gyra up on the mountain where he's been hiding, tending to his wounds, because he's jacked up. I mean, the self-defense force jacked him up big time. Yeah. So he's recuperating, and as that's happening, Dr. Stewart is talking to they never give him the army commander, who's played by Jun Tazaki, who we've seen in several Godzilla films as well and other Toho films. The Japanese Defense Force wants to kill both of them. And again, a la like Frankenstein, Dr. Stewart and Dr. Tokugawa are like, no, don't kill Sanda. Sanda's not, doesn't eat people. Sanda's innocent. We haven't even seen Sanda in 5 years because Sanda doesn't bother anybody. We need to kill the green one. But then they also find out that because of the way that these things are the same creature and they were able to grow an entire other Gargantua, that if the Defense Force just blows them up, we could have 1,000 Gyras before we know it. So we had to find some other way to stop them. Well, the Defense Force decides they're going to kill him anyways unless they can prove otherwise. So Dr. Stewart and Tokugawa, they go up to the mountain to try and find Sanda and to prove that he's innocent, so to speak, and is worth not destroying. In the process, they run into a bunch of hikers up there who are all free-spirited and not worried about the Gargantuas, Frankensteins, depending on which version you watch. I'll say that a few more times. Unfortunately, they meet their demise because Gyra finds them and ends up eating them. And while this is going on, actually Tokugawa, Dr. Tokugawa, as they're running from Gyra, she falls down the side of a cliff, and Sanda comes out of nowhere to try and save her. In the process, a massive boulder falls down and actually breaks Sanda's leg, but Sanda still saves Dr. Tokugawa, and they manage to escape thanks to Sanda's help, and that's the proof they need to not kill Sanda, is that he is innocent. As Sanda, limps around and goes back to where him and Gyra have been staying, Sanda sees all of the clothing articles from the humans that Gyra just ate, and Sanda realizes what just happened and flips lid, rips a tree out of the side of the mountain, and just proceeds to start beating Gyra with it. Gyra loses it, takes off running, and runs back to the ocean. And as he's running back to the ocean, they're trying to find a way to stop him, figuring out what to do. Of course, they decide, you know what, we're just going to blow him up and then we'll pick up the pieces later. And so this actually culminates into the final fight there in Tokyo, as they're trying to stop Gyra and kill him. Sanda shows up, and the army actually decides to help Sanda because Sanda still doesn't want to hurt Gyra, and you see that in his character. He's innocent, and he wants to find a better way to resolve the issue. But he keeps shaking his hand at him like, no, let's not fight. But Gyra keeps coming at him, keeps biting him, keeps attacking him, and then finally the flip switches for Sanda, and Sanda's like, all right, enough's enough. I'm going to pound you down. And that's exactly what he does. He just turns the flip and just starts beating Gyra to nothing. Ends up running him out into the ocean, picks up a big freightliner, slams it in the back of his head, bleeding everywhere over the top of his head. One of the best scenes in the movie. their fight continues out to the ocean, and then it's so intense that it actually causes an underwater volcano to erupt. And during the eruption, they disappear, presumably dying, and that's the end of the movie. Ruben, you take this one first. We happen to say everything
all right
on the last one, so let's let you run with this one first.
No. Well, actually, this one is one of my childhood favorites. It was on regular rotation, and is one of the Toho films that was really on quite a bit. And man, I remember the first time I saw it, I just it was just great. I'm like, man, look, what is this? So to me, from the opening credit, the soundtrack on this, the score is top notch to me. I mean, if you want to compare, I mean, I like this one better than it's one of the best scores. It's one of my favorite scores, I should say.
I'm with you.
It's one of my
that.
favorite scores.
Aside from the
one
Godzilla
of my favorite
theme,
scores.
It's my favorite affinity work, period.
Yeah, it's just top notch. I'm like, man, you hear, and it's an eerie theme. It's almost like a horror type theme to it, and you're watching it, and I love the creature design on this one. Totally different from Frankenstein. So I don't know, it's so funny how if you just watch this standalone, and you watch the American version, you would never know there was a sequel. They make maybe one reference in the dubbed version, versus the Japanese, and but it's just great. The fight sequences are great. I love the miniature work on this one more than I do on Frankenstein Conquers. I thought the miniature work was good on this one. It's great, like you were talking about, in the woods when they're fighting in the woods. That's great. Toho outdid themselves with that, with the miniatures and the special effects on this movie. It was really great, and this one got a little bit higher rating than the rest of them for me. The other one, because of nostalgia. Because as soon as I heard that, that opening credit, man, it took me back to a cold Friday night in fall, raining outside, and I'm sitting there watching War of the Gargantuas. It's just one of those movies that really, really gets me going, and everything about it is great. I mean, I was hesitant to give it a real high score because it's only nostalgia for me. It's mostly nostalgia, but because I thought the story was good, but it was a little choppy because it's like they were running on a sequel that I never that I didn't even know existed. So that kind of threw me off a little bit. Now I know, of course, that like they showed them raising a little baby Frankenstein, but they're never, it just didn't make any sense to me. So that kind of threw me off. So I took off some points for that. But the battle scenes were great. I mean, when they're fighting, and you're right. I found it strange. It's funny. Sanda was trying to talk down Gyro and say, "Hey, wait a minute, man. Let's talk about this. We don't need to do this. You don't need to be eating people. Please stop." And he just was having none of it. And you're right. It turned into a WWF or WWE wrestling match after that.
Yeah, it did.
It did. It turned into just an awesome battle. I did find it strange that a volcano appeared out of nowhere in Tokyo Bay, but it is what it is as far as Toho goes. But let me just say though, I do want to. I mean, Toho just was knocking it out of the park in this time period with movies. I mean, they were just chugging out some good stuff. Godzilla, and with this storyline, they were just doing good work at this period of time. Unfortunately, it got a little bit, there were ups and downs, but props to Toho in this time period. They were really putting out some good stuff here in the mid to late 60s. Just great work. And that's all I got, man. I'm gonna pass it on to one of you guys.
Mark,
when we were talking about the Frankenstein movie on how it ended so weird, and then War of the Gargantuas starts out with this octopus. But
yeah,
really when I was a child got me into this movie is that movie started with that octopus. Didn't know what the movie was, had no clue. The movie just started, and all of a sudden here's this giant octopus, and I'm thought, hey, I'll watch this, and it kind of drew me in. and
I gotcha.
and I love the movie. You know, that's
a good point. I didn't think about that because that's what drew. Probably as a child, that's what drew. I mean, this just drew me in immediately as a kid. So it's probably the octopus. You know, you're just flipping channels and there's an octopus. You're like,
oh yeah,
I gotta watch this.
Oh yeah, what's going on here? You got to watch it. And I agree. I mean, I just thought it was of the two movies, I think it's a step up. I probably could have gave it a higher rating or a stomp, but really enjoyed the movie. I really liked the action when it was, you know, when the fights were going on, when everything was happening. I thought the storyline was good. The music was good. The score was very good. And overall, I think really good movie. It wasn't something that when I originally watched it that I thought I was watching, you know, referring to the octopus. And so once I started watching it, I was like, oh, this is cool. I like this. I got to keep watching. So it was a really good movie.
I love the movie. I do have some qualms with it, but the qualms still didn't. I gave it a higher rating than Frankenstein, even though I had more qualms with this film than I did Frankenstein. I love the Gargantuas, which again, as you heard us refer Frankensteins and Gargantuas, if you watch the Japanese version of it, they're called Frankensteins until they name them Sanda and Gyra. When they brought it to America and released it in English and did the dubbing, that's when they changed the names to the Gargantuas, and they, you know, referred them as the green Gargantua, the brown one, you know,
right,
and removed the connection with the Frankenstein movie. And as we talked about at the end of Frankenstein, when you watch Frankenstein get drugged down into the water by the octopus, this one starts off with the same octopus used in Frankenstein. And with Frankenstein, you know, you pull off, you know, break a limb, it grows back type deal of what they kind of went more into it. It then makes more sense as to why Gyra's in the ocean versus what they come up with later in the movie. So that's the little time between the two and why they did that ending originally. But then obviously Saberstein hated the way it turned out. They cut it, and it just Frankenstein falls into the, you know, into the earth.
Right.
I mean, the tone of this movie, it's darker, especially with Gyra. I love the fact that you kind of went no holds barred with him eating people, which just made him a menace. You know, I did not like Tamblyn as a replacement for Nick Adams. Of course, you know, when I first saw it, I didn't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
But now, you know, knowing a few years later, which I've known for quite a long time that he was replaced, I mean, I understand it. Like I just don't like the character.
There's no comparison.
Yeah,
there's no comparison.
Nick Adams is so much better of an actor and a better character, you know, period. But this one, I mean, I feel like,
was there a reason given why?
Don't know why. Just know that Saberstein decided to replace Nick. Not sure exactly why, because Nick was supposed to be in all three of the productions that they had to deal with. You know, Monster Zero, Frankenstein, and this. Yes. But last minute, it was decided to replace Nick, which is why some of the character names changed and stuff like that. But there was issues for the film that happened on set that I think kind of came through in the movie, unfortunately. And a lot of it did deal with Tamblyn. Tamblyn actually did not like any of his lines. He felt his lines were stupid. Jeez. So he did opposite. And multiple times, Tanaka talked about it, and Saberstein talked about it. Saberstein just called him a freaking arse, you know, the whole time. Said that he would do opposite of what Honda was directing him to do, and then he would improvise all of his lines again instead of doing what he was scripted to do, to the point where it was such a bad experience that when Toho did the international dubbing for the film, they had another guy dub over his parts. They wouldn't even keep his parts because it was so bad of an experience because I mean, he spoke in English. He doesn't actually speak in Japanese. If you watch the Japanese version, it's Japanese. His lines are dubbed over by a Japanese actor in the Japanese film. Yeah. In the international dub that they did, they got another actor, American actor, to overdub his lines because they didn't want to use his lines because of the experience and how he treated Honda and everybody else on the set. And when they brought the movie to America, it's a different dub. And because in one of the very few, if not the only instance, the American version of this movie is actually longer because they filmed some additional special effects shots for the American release that wasn't done in the Japanese one. Now, when they brought over to America, they had to bring Tamblyn back in because Toho got rid of the audio for him completely. Like, they didn't even keep it. And so he had to come in and redub his lines over. And he didn't remember what he said. So he had to go back and, again, improv his improv lines for the movie. So that's why when you watch the English version, it seems like maybe they're dubbed. It's because they're redubbed. They had to redub it because Toho tossed his audio track out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so it's interesting.
I like that. That's a pretty gangster move right there.
Oh, it is, man.
What?
Toho laid it down.
Yeah.
But so we were talking about before the show, you've got the Toho Master Collection DVD release of the War of the Gargantuas, which is the highest American release quality, but Janice and he's holding it up, dude. It's so good, man. Like, it's a double feature with Rodan that they released. Black Case, most people have probably seen it, or at least seen it in like an FYE or store. But Criterion and Janice got the rights to it and did the new transfer and everything. But if you go back and if you watch, make sure I'm saying this right, you watch the Toho Masters copy, the English dubbing on that one is the international dubbing, where it's not Tamblyn doing his part in the English dub. Yeah. But if you go watch the Criterion English version, it's the version that we got back on VHS with Tamblyn redubbing his lines over top of it. But so one of the reasons why that specific release from Toho is worth so much is because it's the only DVD copy of the international dubbing where they took Tamblyn out, which is pretty cool in my opinion. But so, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, of course, there was a lot of issues on set. This movie actually is considered a cult classic by many people. Yeah. Brad Pitt actually was quoted stating the reason he started acting and wanted to act was because of War of the Gargantuas. This movie is what inspired him to become an actor. Wow. Quentin Tarantino has been quoted saying this is one of his top 5 favorite films. There's the scene in Kill Bill where Lucy Liu and Uma Thurman have that fight with the miniature Tokyo set. And if you remember, they have the lines where they call him the blonde Gargantua and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
All of that, that whole scene was put in the movie by Tarantino to give homage to War of the Gargantuas. That's the only reason it's in there.
That's cool. So cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this movie is huge for so many people. Michael Dougherty, who did Godzilla King of the Monsters, Krampus, he let it be known on one of the special features or in an interview, he wanted to. He would have loved to and still would love to bring the Gargantuas into the Monsterverse films because it's one of his favorite films as well. You know, he was like, if I could pick any other monster movie to do, if it wasn't in the Godzilla film, it'd be War of the Gargantuas. It's a phenomenal film. I mean, it was huge on TV, not just, I mean, in your all's, when you all were kids, even for me, it was constantly on Monstervision.
Careful how you say that.
The age difference there. Mm-hmm. It was constantly on Monstervision. It was constantly on Sci-Fi Channel Saturday, the monster shows. Oh, yeah. Sammy Terry and all those guys, they were playing it on regular rotation. This movie just never, as far as home television viewings, it was in constant rotation and still has been. Because it is just a big fan favorite. It's great. The action in it's phenomenal. The soundtrack's great. And I gotta say too, we're talking about the sets on this and the miniature work. Yasuyuki Inouye, okay, which if you've never heard of this guy, you probably never have. He did set work for a ton of Toho films, all the way up into the 80s. I think he actually ended up winning an award for Princess of the Moon. In 87, he may have won an Academy Award or something, but he's got a great story. He was in the war. He actually lost a foot, and he would walk by Toho after the war, and didn't really have a job and was trying to find ways to get food. Well, he would just go and Toho would give box lunches out. So he would show up at Toho and he would just get lunches there. And it got to the point where he just ended up talking to people. And what he did, he was going to school for carpentry work to build furniture. And he was phenomenal at it. He was super good at it to the point that I can't remember if it was Tomoyuki or if it was Aisha. One of them noticed and said, "Hey, why don't you come in?" And they gave him a job starting doing set works for the miniature sets for these movies. I mean, he's worked on a ton of the Godzilla films. I mean, Son of Godzilla,
Yeah.
Meg Godzilla, God vs. Gigan. I mean, he did Yog Monster from Space. He did this one. And he's done so many movies because he was phenomenal at it. And I think these two movies, especially minus one scene, which I will bring up in this film, but especially in these two films, his miniature work was just unbelievable.
Yeah. I was super impressed by it. That's why I mentioned it. I said, man, this is great.
Yeah.
This is just great.
My only complaint is the one scene where Gyra is grabbing the tanks and throwing them at the houses out in the the woods. If you really pay attention, either A, those are some massive tanks, or those are some really small houses. That's my only complaint. They look amazing. Excuse me.
They did.
The tanks and the houses look awesome, but I'm like, man.
It's just the scale wasn't there.
I'm like, the scale was just, and that was the only time in the movie, though, the scale was off. But other than that, I mean, I think this movie is great. The last fight, man, I mean, I always, as a kid, remember watching it going, oh, here it comes. It was almost like that Rocky versus Drago type deal when or him against Mr. T, he's like, come on, that all you got?
Yeah.
When you see Santa flip switch there, dude, I'm like, dude, I love it. I'm like, I don't get enough of that. But I'm like, he just starts pounding him. And when he picks that big oil tanker up and just slams it in his back, and Gyra comes out and he's bleeding all over his face, I'm like, dude, this is so good. I love this movie, man. I mean, of the two, it's definitely, I gave it a higher rating. Let's find out, man. We gave Frankenstein a 3 all across the board. Let's find out how many stomps this one got. All right, so this one, unfortunately, because of Mark,
I knew it was coming. I knew it.
And this is his fault. But this one got a 3.5 out of 5, so slightly better. Now, me and Ruben went a whole another point up, but Mark drug it down a little bit.
I stayed the same. I stayed the same.
To 3. So overall, 3.5. This one of the two, definitely we like this one more. It is more fun. There's more. Even though there's some plot issues, depending on which version you watch, this one just had more to it. Soundtrack, special effects, monster fights. I forgot one other thing that really made me mad about this movie is the scene after Santa shows up, or Gyra shows up the second time, and you got that girl in the yellow dress singing.
She's singing something. I forget
the words caught on my throat or something like that.
Yeah,
the fact that he didn't eat her, man, that still pisses me off to this day. Like, I cannot stand her voice or that song.
Get rid of her.
Even when I watched it the other day, I'm like, eat her, just eat her. And he's even got her in her hand and everything. I'm like, it's going to happen. And no, he doesn't eat her. It drives me nuts. But other than that, man.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, he did drop her he just abruptly dropped her right on the concrete, right there on the stage.
Yeah, so you assume she's dead, but she should have been eaten. I don't care. She should have been eaten. All right, guys. So, there you go. Frankenstein Conquers the World and War of the Gargantuas. 2 great movies. War of the Gargantuas, again, you guys probably have heard of or have seen. It was a constant rotation. It's a very popular Toho film. But Frankenstein Conquers the World has been kind of obscured and is hard to find. But if you can find it, man, it is well worth the watch. It's one of Toho's better films.
Hey, if Brad Pitt went into acting over
Frank War of the Gargantuas, it's worth seeing.
Better check it out.
And when you said that, I said, well, that makes sense because it was in such high rotation, and so, somebody like Brad Pitt or Tarantino, they would have all seen it just like we did, and like I said, it was one of
checking the TV guide, going, man, when's it playing next?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
exactly.
Great movies. Y'all check them out if you can. I mean, obviously you'll be able to see War of the Gargantuas probably easier. It's the better of the two, but that's not taken away from Frankenstein Conquers the World. There are a ton of Frankenstein movies out there.
I'm gonna plug my company. If you want to watch War of the Gargantuas, you can watch it on HBO Max, and it is the Criterion edition.
There you go.
It's a very good transfer that I saw on HBO Max.
Ruben,
Ruben, he's going to bleep that out, when it comes through.
Yeah, I know, right?
He needs a raise now. They need to give him a raise.
Yeah.
Wait, he gets a raise from you?
No, not me.
Oh,
His
okay. I'll
company.
say, wait,
Like,
do it. There's something I don't know going on
raise
here
from AT&T, which
okay.
owns HBO Max.
Okay, that's fine.
There you go, AT&T. Sledge should give him a raise.
Yeah.
Maybe I would laugh if like tomorrow he's like, I got a 2-cent raise.
Hey, man, I got a bonus.
Yeah. Like, hey, there you go.
Unfortunately, I'm union. That's not how it works. It's either we all get a raise or we don't get a raise. None of us get a raise. So it's all or nothing for us.
Well, there you go.
So,
well, AT&T, give it all. Give them
well,
all.
no, what I'm thinking now, you just, maybe Sludge needs to come up with a little something there out of the pocket.
Well, I already pay enough as it is.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't want to hear it, man.
That's why he's got to take certain lunch boxes to lunch with him.
Oh, whatever. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Again, it is Christmas time, and we've got, of course, this special Christmas episode coming up for the entire podcast. We'll be dropping on Christmas Eve. We know you guys are going to enjoy it. We hope you guys are going to enjoy it. We're working really hard on it. Not just me and Charlie. Everybody's working on it. And I want to state that.
But mostly him and Charlie.
But mostly me and Charlie.
Mark.
Yeah, there we go.
But hopefully you guys enjoy that. And then, of course, we've got our Christmas episode coming up right after that one. So we'll be dropping ours on Christmas Day, and we'll be doing Ruben's favorite,
Phoebe Cates.
Phoebe Cates.
Oh, wait. The
Gremlins movie.
Yeah. There it is. There it is.
That movie.
Yeah, there might be a couple of gremlins in there, but that's not what I'm watching. So get ready for my review to be all about Phoebe, and that's
I
it.
swear, if we get on that episode and Ruben starts reviewing Fast Times at Ridgemont High, we're like, come on,
no.
wrong movie. So,
but if you had to make a mistake in watching movies,
so stay tuned. We've got Gremlins coming up for Christmas, and then next month we have got our giant monster movie of the new year is going to be Rodan. Y'all have said a lot about that one on the group page. And then we have decided to do he's not a fan, he's a friend, a listener request.
Request.
Cameron, we're doing Killdozer.
Well, I think that's how we need to name that. Cameron's Killdozer.
Cameron's Killdozer.
That's the episode. There
you go, Cameron. You're the
Cameron's Killdozer.
And now I will say, Cameron, the last, we've had a listener request before, and then we did it, and I was devastated. I was like, man. As a matter, I'm like, no, maybe, no, we're not doing this again. So I hope not.
It was. If you go back and remember that one, we'd have had to throw another movie into the mix just to make up for it. So do not disappoint us, Cameron. If you do, we will let you know.
Yes.
Although the posts look very interesting, so I think we're gonna be all right on this one, guys.
I think so.
It sounds like it's gonna be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Just judging by the trailer of Killdozer, it's gonna be superior to Colossal in every way. So
exactly.
It's got Clint Walker. I'm already excited about it.
You better hope.
That's
Cameron,
funny.
We will not
I was doing some research. For stuff to put on our Facebook group page. And I ran into this one that said the top 10 giant monster movies, and I was going through it, and I was like, yeah, that one's good. Colossal was on it. I'm like, nope, that's it. This thing's off the list. I'm not putting this on our webpage. If they think Colossal, you had Godzilla, you had King Kong, on there, you had. Yeah, and then
dude, I would put
right there in the middle.
I would put. I don't even know if you consider it a giant monster movie, but considering the monsters in it are giants, I would put Night of the Lepus above Colossal.
Wow!
Wow! Oh, Night of the Lepus is a lot of fun. Like Food of the Gods, I put Food of the Gods ahead of that one.
Oh, I'd put Food of the Gods Part 2 over Colossal, and that was a turd. First one was great, but man, that second one was rough. So
go ahead, Cameron. Just go ahead,
Cameron.
buddy.
Don't let us down with Killdozer. So
suggest that movie.
But just know,
8 months from now.
If you let us down, you're going to be in for it for a long time. Just like
we'll be 8 months from now. We'll be still talking about Cameron's Killdozer.
I know. And Cameron, look, you invited us onto your show, and we'll be coming on some episodes. And if you let us down, we're going to let you know on your show.
On your show. There you go.
All right. Well, guys, thank you all again so much. Again, we'll be back Christmas with Gremlins. Next month, we've got Rodan and Cameron's Killdozer.
Yes.
And we won't talk to you guys before Christmas, actually. So you know what? we want to make sure, and of course, we got something special planned for you guys with the Christmas episode, but we just want to let you all know we love you, and we all hope you all have a wonderful Merry Christmas, because we say Christmas here. Period.
Merry Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, you got that right.
So,
Christmas. That's right.
Merry Christmas, y'all. This is Sludge.
And Mark.
And Ruben in Texas.
Y'all have a good night.
Ready now.
Come on, you hey! You want to live forever?
Now what?
But no matter what happens, Godzilla will live.
And I look at him, I'm like, okay, so what's the schedule? And he's like, well, you got to tell me what movies there are.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I didn't know I was to pick out all the movies.
That ain't my job no more.
Oh,
Like I told
okay.
you to pay attention to Facebook.
Well,
Like, giant monster film, then a monster film.
Before we would discuss it between us, and then we would choose it. You're like, why ain't you got that out yet?
Yeah, come on, dude.
Oh, see, I went through that. And I couldn't find that either.
It's totally in there. Anyways,
Are we recording this?
We're recording
You can
this,
cut
yeah.
this out, really, because
Yeah.
I forgot about the LSD.
Yeah, all this is getting edited out. Yeah, all this is getting edited out.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And now that we're back from the commercials and Mark's LSD trip, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Here we go.